Healing sucks. I'll say it. I bet you didn't think the video was going to start this way. But oh my God, I hope every single one of you has the chance to experience it one day. The part where the brain fog finally starts to lift, the nausea stops, your body actually feels like it's something that's working for you instead of against you. But if you are in the messy middle, like I am right now, and you're struggling to keep a positive mindset, or you're trying to decide whether or not you should actually start your own healing journey, this video is going to be for you. Welcome back to Organized Chaos. My name is Regan, and I am so very happy that you are here. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to share my own healing journey with you all. I'm a little bit nervous about it. I know that I constantly say we're getting vulnerable in this video, but this one in particular, I've been procrastinating on because I just don't necessarily know how to go about the conversation. I don't know how much you want to know. I don't know how much I'm ready to share yet. So there are a lot of questions still hanging over me. 5 years ago, when I started my journey with therapy, when I started my journey with antidepressants, when I really started diving into my own mental health, I wish that somebody was around to tell me the truth about it. I wish that somebody was around to tell me that it was okay, that there are going to be moments of non-linear healing, and then that's so normal. Sometimes we can get into our own head that our situation's not bad enough, we aren't in enough pain, or that the pain doesn't really exist, or that we don't need therapy, or that we don't have anything wrong with us, because nobody wants to sit there and admit that, hey, I'm not perfect. If I've learned anything over the last however many years of my healing journey, it's that perfect is boring. But being messy, as scary as it can be, actually brings you so much freedom, because it means you don't need to be on all the time. It means that your nervous system can actually take a breath when it wants to take a breath. But getting there, getting to that realization, getting to the point where you can admit it freely and wholly, that's the part that's so hard. So I wanted to start today by going through what my own journey with mental health looked like, and then we'll get into some of the decisions that I made along the way, but really how all of the anxiety and the stress in my body manifested itself into everything that's going on in my gut today. You've heard me talk about I'm on this protocol, I'm taking these supplements, but I haven't really been explicit about what is happening. So hopefully today shed some light on it. If any of you have similar experiences, please always let me know. Send me a message, send me a DM, follow me on social media, Regan.Olsey on TikTok and Instagram. I'd love for you to be a part of those communities there. Quick disclaimer before we dive in, as always, I am the queen of disclaimers. This is my own experience. This may not be your experience. You may not agree with all this experience. Remember, I am a human. I'm sitting on the other side of the screen. Hey, hi. And it is not always comfortable sharing these. If you're like, hey, this doesn't really resonate with me, totally cool. I'll see you later. You definitely don't need to sit around for this video. I want to reach the people who were like me years ago, who were scared, who were nervous, but who are also so overwhelmed and so anxious that they didn't even know how to admit it to themselves, because it's such a scary place to be in. My goal in sharing this is not to compare myself to you. We all have our own experiences, we all have our own lives, and I would never dream of making a comparison to yours. All I want to do is offer a tiny glimmer of hope to let people know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can do it and you can work towards it, and I promise you it is coming. It may seem like it's taking fucking forever, but it is coming. Let's start with some of the things happening in my brain. I lost my sister in 2012. I'm one of three, I'm the oldest, and I have my brother, who is my absolute best friend, and then I had my sister. My sister was also my absolute best friend, but in a very, very different way. She was disabled for her entire life. And growing up with a disabled sibling, if you have that experience, you will know it shapes you to be a different human. It teaches you what life is like from someone else's perspective and someone else's eyes. Our communication was not through voice. It was through thoughts and feelings. It was through emotion. She couldn't talk, she couldn't walk, but boy, did she have the most beautiful, sparkling blue eyes ever. When she died in 2012, that took a huge toll on my life. I refused to allow any of that anxiety to trickle out. Whether it was I needed to be strong for my family, or I needed to be strong for myself, or I just was afraid of what that would look like if I actually started to break down, I'm still not really sure. But that compartmentalization is impossible for a long period of time. When you're going through that level of stress, your body is not equipped to handle it. So it starts to come out in different ways. That might be snapping at somebody, that might be feeling exhausted. For me, it was panic attacks. My panic attacks started about 6 months out from losing my sister, and I would go into a full-blown panic attack about 3 to 4 times a day at its absolute peak. The point that I knew something needed to change was I was on the phone to my mom, and all of a sudden in the car driving, I had a panic attack. And her and I very quickly recognized this is not something that I can continue. I started going to intensive therapy sessions and very quickly was moved onto antidepressants. But at that time, I didn't know the impact of antidepressants. Over time, I've recognized which antidepressants work for me, which don't work for me. One of the misconceptions that people have about antidepressants is that every single strain is going to work for every single person. Is it called a strain or is that just weed? I can't remember. I think it's called a strain. Type, regardless. Every single type is going to work for every single person. That's not true. Everyone's body composition, brain composition is different. So one might work for you, one might work for another person. And I've probably tried 4 different brands. There's the word. I've probably tried 4 different brands throughout the course of my life until I finally found the one that worked for me. The same thing goes for therapists. The first therapist that you find may not necessarily be the one that is the right choice for you. And so you're welcome to go and test out different therapists. You should almost look at it like speed dating in a way. You have to be comfortable with them. You have to be ready to be vulnerable with them for it to really work. So I started to go through therapy. I was dealing with a ton at home. I mean, the grief and loss alone is a huge, huge burden. I was on my medication, but I wasn't making any other lifestyle changes. I didn't realize how pervasive that stress was and how much of it I would hold on to until much, much later in my life. I also started developing other coping mechanisms like being a people pleaser, like having very few boundaries, an incredibly anxious attachment style. I self-medicated. I was going out, I was drinking, I was smoking. I mean, you name it, I was trying to numb the pain until I realized I didn't even really know who I was anymore. I had gone from this happy-go-lucky girl to a woman who was so scared and so nervous about the tiger lurking around the corner every single step of the way that I couldn't even make decisions for myself. But no one else knew that. I was still very, very, very high functioning. And so if anyone had asked, they would have gone, Regan's fine. She's great. And I was proud of that. I was proud that I could manage everything at once. Again, not realizing how much impact that stress was having on my body and my nervous system. We'll get to that a little bit later. I started making decisions that me now probably looks back at and goes, that definitely wasn't the right decision for me. I'm trying to look at those decisions with compassion as opposed to judgment. And if you are in a similar situation, I would so urge you to do the same exact thing, because we all make decisions with the information that we have on hand at the moment we make that decision. No one is making a decision and saying, I want to make a decision that's not right for me. No one is doing that. We're all just trying to cope with everything that life throws at us. And to live that way, my heart hurts for younger Regan because I know how anxious she was. If you are living with that, know that you're not alone. I know how scary that can be and how lost you can feel. Those kind of nerves set your nervous system alight. It sets you on fire. It just stops your body from being able to focus on anything else except for that one thing, that one tiger in front of you. Once I started working with my therapist, I really started to understand why I acted certain ways. I understood myself. I understood the life that I was leading. I understood how my previous experiences had impacted me today. But what that took was taking everything down, putting scaffolding up around myself and rebuilding slowly. That rebuild is possible. It just takes time. So I continued like that for many years. I started to build and put my life back together. I ended up quitting the job that brought me a ton of stress and anxiety. I continued working with a therapist. I really understood and started to feel my feelings and emotions for the first time. But when you do that, it is disorientating. It makes you feel exhausted. You don't realize how much energy it takes to be stressed, but you also don't realize how much energy it takes to start to heal. All of these are good signs, but when it first starts happening, it's jarring. After we're finished traveling, we go and we resettle in Amsterdam. We are just starting to figure out what our life is going to look like in the future. We're just about to get married. And then I lost my dad. But I am so grateful that I had a therapist to help me through, my husband to help me through, my brother to help me through, my friends to help me through. I had this team built around me and I became more comfortable with the idea of vulnerability. Without that confidence in myself to be vulnerable, without the understanding that it's okay to be messy and to break down and to fall apart, there's no way I would have been able to make it through that time. Because already my coping mechanism was to lock it all down, was to compartmentalize, because you go into fight or flight. It's so easy for us to go into this stress response. We don't even realize we're going into a stress response sometimes, but we end up separating that mind-body connection. And that is where I started to learn that I had the most amount of healing to do. So we've gone through the mental side. Now I will tell you about how that all connected into the physical side of my body. As I started to unravel really the complexities of all of my different health issues, I already have celiacs. I have anxiety and depression and panic attacks and something called CPTSD, which is called complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I can go into any of those in more detail if you all are interested in it, but for now, we'll just keep it with those general topics. But once I really understood the mental health side, I was ready to move on to how's it impacting my gut? Or how is my gut impacting that? Because there's a connection, there's a dual-sided connection there that so many people undervalue. I had an overgrowth of Candida, H. pylori, and a handful of other different strains in my body, which if you know anything about Candida or H. pylori, they're very difficult to get rid of. But it also takes focus and understanding and knowledge about your own body and prioritizing your healing in order to get there. The overflow of bacteria was a stark indicator of all of the stress and anxiety I had carried throughout my body over the years. It takes a stressed body to allow all of that bacteria to grow in the amount that I had in my own body. One of the best decisions that I have made to this day in my life is working with a functional nutritionist. I started working with her originally as my husband and I started talking about family planning. We wanted to figure out how our family could start to come together. I wanted to prepare my body for my family in the future so I could carry my family in the future. And I knew it would start by working with someone who could help me understand my own hormones. It totally changed directions because I realized I could not actually start to hone in on my fertility until I had healed my gut. So one of the first things that she had me do was take some tests to understand what was going on in my little body. We then had a very serious conversation about the stress in my life. And she said to me in no uncertain terms, your body cannot start to heal until you've reduced the stress in your life. And that sounds practically impossible. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day. We were talking about this concept of reducing stress, and she responded in a very similar way to, I know the way I used to respond, which was, there's no way for me to lower my stress levels. I have too much to do. And I used to be in that camp. That was my motto. If I rested, if I didn't take on as much, well, then I wasn't living up to my own expectations of myself. But my own expectations of myself were warped. It wasn't really where I wanted to head or really where I wanted to go. I believe that a ton of that stems from people pleasing. A ton of it stems from not understanding or believing our own worth and not understanding or believing that we are worthy of love and affection and adoration no matter how we show up. You are worthy of who you are today as you show up in any way, shape, or form. If you haven't already watched my video on people pleasing, make sure you go back and you watch it because I loved talking about the concept of people pleasing. I've done a ton of work on it in therapy in the last couple of years. I'm still trying to shift some of those people pleasing tactics that I have, but I think it'll be helpful in identifying, especially in your own life, where maybe you take on some of those. You might take on more, some of you might take on less, but go and watch that video after this one. They'll pair very, very nicely together. Once I started working with my functional nutritionist, I realized I needed to balance my nervous system. And this is what I really wanted to get to in this video. Everything that I've learned about healing and why it is so important for you to prioritize healing in your life in no matter what way, shape, or form that looks like for you. It absolutely transforms the way that you wake up in the morning. When I said earlier on in this video that your brain fog lifts, you have higher concentration levels, your body starts working for you instead of against you, I meant it. I was the poster child for stomach aches, for nausea, for anxiety, for depression. Obviously, a lot of that came from things happening previously in my life, but it's exacerbated from the overgrowth of bacteria in your gut, your hormones not working, things just not being in sync in your body, and there's so much that you can do about it. So here's everything that I've learned. One, healing is not linear. I watched a really beautiful video the other day on a dahlia blooming, and when a dahlia blooms, it starts to open and then it contracts, and then it starts to open and contracts and opens and contracts. And that's the same with all of us. I thought that image was really beautiful because it can feel like you're taking one step forward and 4 steps back, and 1 step forward and 4 steps back, when in reality, you're doing the exact opposite. You're taking 4 steps forward and 1 step back. But it can feel like a real hit to the ego almost, a real hit to you when you have weeks with no stomach aches, when you have weeks of feeling good, the anxiety has reduced, your brain fog has lifted, and then all of a sudden something triggers you and you don't even know what it is. And I've tried to shift my mindset around where I look at it with curiosity as opposed to judgment, because the curiosity is what's going to help us continue to heal. And that brings me to my second point, which is the experiences that you have will always stick with you. And this one might be a hard pill to swallow, but they're not going anywhere. Those experiences, that trauma that potentially you've had, the stress that you've had in your life, that's not going anywhere. That is etched into you. But you can find ways to live with it. To be fair, I don't want those parts of me to leave. I don't love them. I'm not super excited about them, obviously. They're incredibly painful, but they are who I am. They've made me who I am. And I think it's important for me to recognize that and to almost let them sit in this little box. I can take it out. I can look at it when I want to, but I can also put it away because I've processed it in a way that I know is going to help me build coping mechanisms that support me based on the experiences that I've had. That's what's important here, is equity in that support. The healing routine that you have may not look the same as the one that I have, may not look the same as the one that someone else has, but you can learn and you can pick up different tricks and tools from everyone around you. And it starts with recognizing that those experiences, they're not going to go anywhere, but you can start to learn to live with them. The third thing that I've learned, kind of continuing on from this, is it takes a team. It is impossible to heal on your own. You don't need to heal on your own. I think that's probably a better way to phrase it. I am currently in what I like to call the messy middle. Things don't always feel like they're moving in the right direction, but I know that they are because I have a team of people around me to support me. Here's a little example of everyone that I have on my team. I'm currently working with a therapist, a functional nutritionist, a physio. I'm actually going to go do jaw Botox in the next couple of days. That sounds funky, but really it's so that it can help my TMJ. I do red light therapy in a sauna. I wear my Oura Ring. I consider my Oura Ring to be a part of my team so I can help monitor my stress levels throughout the day and understand what my heart rate is doing, how stressed I am, and if I can make any changes throughout my day to help my body feel a little bit more safe. I get my groceries delivered. I have my husband. I call my friends. There are so many different things that I do on a daily basis that help me move through this healing process. You can be supported. You can be surrounded. Sometimes you need to fall apart in order to put yourself back together again. The fourth thing that I've learned is it starts with your nervous system. I'm gonna get like semi-sciencey, but I'll explain it in an easy way. To maintain our health, our autonomic nervous system does things that continue to keep us going. So it helps us breathe, it helps our nails grow, it helps our hair grow, it helps us digest food, it helps us process everything. But that system is divided into two different systems, your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous systems. In times of danger, your sympathetic nervous system protects you. Your sympathetic nervous system kicks in and goes, right, what kind of stress response do I need to have? Is that fight, flight, fawn, or flee? And your parasympathetic nervous system takes a total step back in order to let your sympathetic nervous system protect you. That's what you need. All systems are going to be a go when there's something threatening your body. But in order to do that, something has to give. Your body can only focus so much energy in one direction. So it's going to give on the parasympathetic nervous system. It's going to take a step back and say, right, we are going to stop functioning. You still have to breathe. You still need to have these different systems operate, but they're going to be operating at half speed. So many of us are in a constant state of stress that we may not even realize it anymore. And starting with making your body feel safe, that's eating regularly. It's feeding your body nutritious foods. It's sleeping regularly. It's building routines back into your life. It's moving slower, not rushing from meeting to meeting. It's setting boundaries and letting people know that you need 10 minutes, 20 minutes, that, hey, I can't hang out today. I need to sleep. It's prioritizing yourself, but it starts with prioritizing your nervous system. And I pushed back against that idea. I talked about it earlier on in this episode for so long that it probably prolonged my recovery because of that. And the very last thing that I've learned is it is one of the absolute best things that you can do for yourself. It improves your relationships, it improves your self-confidence, it improves your resilience. It helps you get to know who you are, who you want to be, where you want your life to go in a way that I truly don't believe would have been possible if I hadn't gone through this healing journey. When you are stuck in that stress state, your body and your brain are really only thinking about what's going to happen in the near future. But when you take a step back, you allow your true personality to come out. You allow yourself to experience the full spectrum of emotions. You allow yourself to be a human. And that is what makes you beautiful. That is what makes you you. And that is something I would never, ever want you to change. So this is where I am right now on my own healing journey. If you want to see day-to-day kind of play-by-plays of what my healing journey really looks like, head over to Instagram and TikTok. I'm building my communities over there and would love for you to come and join it. I talk about the different supplements that I'm on. I talk about my different symptoms that I'm experiencing. Come ask me questions. I'm learning every single day more about this. I'm happy to do a deeper update if you want to a couple months in the future as I continue to learn more and more about this journey. Ask and you shall receive. Just send me a message, send me a DM or a comment. Thank you so much for letting me get so vulnerable in this episode. Remember, you are not alone. You have a team, you have people that love you and that support you, and I am here with you every single step of the way. You, my love, are very, very worthy of healing, and don't you ever forget that. I'm Regan, and this has been another episode of Organized Chaos. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.